really exposing our culture more, especially with social media. Especially with social media. Don't just tag like your friends that are Filipino because you're eating lumpia. Tag your other friends that are non-Filipino so they could be like, oh shoot, I want to try that.
This episode is brought to you by
Hi everyone, good afternoon. We're here at Venerable Injury Law, and right here next to me is Mike Azagra, their Client Relations Manager. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much for asking. And how are you?
I'm good, and
Yeah.
we're here at the Venerable Injury Law offices here in Monterey Park. Tell me, are you from Monterey Park?
Well, no, I'm not from Monterey Park, but I'm actually from Eagle Rock. And the actual office, the corporate office, is in Koreatown, but I run the Monterey Park branch.
Are you close to where the real Eagle Rock is?
Well, yeah, I'm very close to the real Eagle Rock, where the Eagle Rock Plaza and the Tommies, and all the the Eagle Rock Plaza is like the Filipino mall, of LA with Seafood City and Chowking and Jollibee. So,
Do you frequent Eagle Rock Plaza?
you know what? I do, especially when I want Jollibee, because that's the only Jollibee that's near where I live. So for peach mango pie, that's where I go, Eagle Rock, yeah. And then you'll also see like the rest of the local Filipino community there. So it's kind of like a little hangout.
And I know Macy's left, right? So
Yeah,
the only anchor for Eagle Rock Plaza now is really Seafood City.
Yeah, Seafood City and the Target.
Target.
That's what we call it, right? The Target.
Yeah, the Target.
Target is the one that's holding it down, but yeah, it changes a lot at that mall. It really does. But I think it also adds to the fact that a lot of cities change over time, because Eagle Rock is right next to Highland Park, and Highland Park back in the day was pretty non-developed. Let me just call it non-developed. But now it's like the hangout.
Yeah, it is. Highland Park is now called HP.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the hipsters hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah? Where the hipsters hang out. And so it's very similar to, like, for example, in LA, Filipino Town is now like the place to hang out. And I remember a long time ago, back in the day, it was also like, not too developed, so you don't really want to hang out there. But now it's like, you got Dollar Hits over there now, and they have like a little hangout, buy Kubos. I mean, they've always been there, but now it's like the cool thing to hang out in that area.
That's what we've always wanted, because our forefathers and the people who came before us, the Filipino Americans who settled here in LA, have long been fighting for a district named after Filipinos and for Filipino Americans to get recognized, especially here in LA, in Southern California. Our ancestors here in Los Angeles, even before the 70s, have been fighting for recognition for Filipino Americans, and it's great that we now have a district, a neighborhood named after us, which is Historic Filipino Town. You frequented Historic Filipino Town a long time ago, right?
Yeah, so I am like the 90s LA Philam Pinoy boy. And so we used to live in that area. And of course my mom's a nurse, and so she used to work at the two main hospitals in that area. So we would always be.
Which ones are those?
It's White Memorial. I don't see, the names changed also over time, but it was White Memorial and St. Vincent, which is no longer there.
Yeah.
And so that Filipino community grew. It grew, and so the restaurants there, the stores there now. It's pretty amazing how the growth of the Filipino community really spread out.
Since the 70s, a lot of Filipino Americans settled in Historic Filipino Town because of the hospitals there and the hospitals on Vermont as well. Hollywood Presbyterian and Kaiser Permanente is there, and Shriners. Smaller hospitals are actually a driving distance from historic Filipino town. So a lot of Filipinos settled in that area that we now know as historic Filipino town. Yes. But it wasn't always historic Filipino town, right?
Right. No, it wasn't. It was always like, the area where the Pinoys were.
Yeah.
But it was never really recognized as Filipino town.
Mm-hmm. The Rampart division is the station, right? The police station.
Rampart is the infamous police station. For those of you who know, what that means. And that area was pretty infamous for a lot.
Especially, it was notorious.
Especially Filipino gangs and groups back then. I mean, it was really it was really rampant back then. For those of you like from the late 80s and 90s, it was like all over the place.
It was rampant in Rampart.
It was rampant in Rampart. Exactly.
In the 90s, I lived in the valley in the 90s, and he would be like, you don't want to go there, but I attended community college, and some of my friends were bussed in from Rampart Division area, from that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to attend LACC. Went to LA Valley College.
Oh, I remember. Yes. So LACC was also a hot spot for Filipinos because there was an arcade center that was across the street, and I remember there's a lot of again, the Filipino gangs are rampant, right? So there's a certain group of Filipino gangsters that hang out there, and I actually had friends that went there. They would walk in with their jackets, but they would walk out and their jackets would be missing.
Oh, really? Where did they go?
Well, because the Filipino gangsters would take their jackets, So, like I said, it was really crazy back then.
But they have this hangout inside LACC, and they call it the Fallout area or something like that. It was like an underground fallout shelter.
That they would hang out, yeah. There was so many hangouts that was in that area, and then there was Betsy's also. Betsy's was a hot spot to get hot pandesal, and it was always nice too because I would go there with my mom, and then I would see other friends from around because that's where the people would go back then. Back then there wasn't too many. Or there wasn't as many Filipino establishments as there is now.
I remember Lorenzana was there.
Oh, Lorenzana!
Supermarket.
Yes, exactly.
Before all the bigger supermarkets.
Right, yeah.
Right?
That's right. That was on Vermont.
Vermont was the happening place.
Yeah.
Right? Manila Sunset was there. DJ was there.
Yeah.
They were all like almost right next to each other. Yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah, those were the days, right? But what was your favorite restaurant?
Okay, so it wasn't really it was a restaurant during the day, but the nighttime it would turn into a club. It was called Bayanihan. And see, Bayanihan was actually owned by my my former boss who passed away, attorney Edgardo Lopez. But back then, and I think I was only like maybe 15 years old, or 16 years old. I remember going into the crowded parking lot, and it was filled with pompadours, with the tails. I mean, a lot of the 90s Pinoys that are from that area or whatever, that era, will know how we used to dress up back then. And maybe I'll show you guys a picture of the way I looked. It was like crazy, but the scene was you'd have like all these fixed up cars. And then you'd have all the guys with pompadours, and then you'd have all the girls with their bangs straight up like a radar almost.
Like a radar?
Yeah. And you girls know, how it was. And Bayanihan, since back then, like I said, there wasn't too many establishments. This would be the go-to place. It was like that, and also Red Lion and Glendale back then.
Where was Bayanihan?
Well, it was on Beverly. Yeah, it was on Beverly, and I forgot the names that it turned into after that. But it was owned by attorney Ed Lopez, and it was just it was a cool hangout, especially if you were like, I think they even had like 16-year-old nights, so you could go
Oh,
there.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
You could go there if you were
wow.
16. But like I said, back then it's crazy because you'd walk in, and then there's a clique of gangsters on the left. I mean, is it okay if I name the gangsters or?
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So.
They're all old now.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So you'd have like Satanas there. You'd have like PR there, Stalgama there, Flipside there. Like everyone was there, and there'd either be fights inside or fights outside or fights in the streets. And you never want to park your car either in the lot or in front of the establishment because for sure your window's gonna get busted or you're gonna get your car keyed. It was crazy, But I have to say though, even although how crazy it was, I do miss those times. It was just a completely different time back then.
I had a lot of friends who hung out,
Yeah.
in what we know now as historic Filipino
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
And a lot of them came from there. It was like all
Right.
Filipinos. Like, I mean, the 90s was a time when a lot of Filipinos still, lived in that area.
Yeah.
And, soon enough, like 6 or 10 years later, they moved to West
They moved out.
Covina.
Yeah.
They moved to
The
areas in
valleys.
Carson,
Right.
Torrance,
Right.
and Cerritos.
Yeah.
Cerritos was an up and coming neighborhood back then.
Yeah.
Of course, they moved to all these neighborhoods
I
in the
think that was
valley,
like the
or even
hub.
Glendale.
Yeah. I think that was the hub where everyone like came and then they just sprouted out everywhere.
What was Ed Lopez like?
So, I worked for Attorney Lopez for a long time, maybe a little over, I don't know, over a decade. And he was one of the prominent attorneys in the community, especially in the Filipino community. He was part of FACLA. He knew, like, since he was a restaurant owner, he knew a lot of the other restaurants nearby. And he just helped a lot of uh, Filipinos, throughout his career. I mean, he really did a lot. He made a strong impact for the community, especially not only in the Filipino community in like California, in LA, but he also helped out in the Philippines too. Once in a while he'll send out, a lot of care packages to the Philippines. He was really, really special to the community.
And I'm assuming you were helping out in a lot of his projects, right?
Yeah, he did a lot of. He had multiple projects. This man he was an entrepreneur. He was into showbiz. Like for example, Bayanihan, he was one of the first people to help bring over celebrities from the Philippines. Him and Marianne also at that time, and they were bringing over a lot of celebrities. So he had that project going on. He was a movie producer also. Um, he just did so many projects. He was part of organizations to try and help out the Filipino community. He was just all around, and he helped so many people. I remember when, throughout the many years, there would be people that would just show up at the office and just like asking for, some help. Not necessarily money, but more of like a talk. They just want his his opinion on things and his views on things, guidance and stuff. And so it was really amazing to see that.
What kind of advices would he give? Like love advice, or was it about cars, insurance, or anything like that?
Well, he actually knew a lot. He was very wise. Being in law and then growing up, in that area, right? So he knew everything from like a bookworm knowledge to the street knowledge, you know. So no matter what you asked about, he always would have an answer, and he would also tell it to you like in a story. You'd learn from the story, his experiences. So since I was like, learning and growing, he was one of my mentors, and he really, really taught me so much. I miss him tremendously. Yeah.
What was his practice all about?
Well, he did several areas of law. He did everything from personal injury to immigration to bankruptcy, and plus he knew all the other attorneys. He knew so many attorneys that it became like a group, you know. And so he named that group Filipino Law Group. Yeah, he named that with a few other attorneys, and we were all just a strong little circle, um, dedicating our services to Filipinos around the world. Actually, we would have calls from like Canada, we would have calls from Dubai. Everyone. You know how Filipinos they spread out all over the world. And so um, anytime you get into a legal mess, whether it be about land or business, whatever, they would call.
What kind of messes did Filipinos get into at that time?
Oh my gosh, everything from, decades or generations of fighting over property and land to scams. We had a lot of scams like, foreigners falling in love with Filipinos or well, actually both Filipinos and Filipinas, and a lot of like business investments, and he was pretty much all over the place. But keep in mind, he also had a group of other attorneys too, and they all like work together in synergy. Yeah. So if you ask a lot of the prominent Filipino businessmen today, they probably know him or they know of him.
What kind of impact did he make to you
Oh,
personally?
wow. Wow, that's deep. I don't want to cry on your show. But yeah, I mean, he was see, I lost my father to cancer a while back. So, since I worked for Ed for so long, he became like, like I said, my mentor, but he also became my friend. Um, he was family, so he would guide me when I went through a hard time with my divorce, when I had some challenges with my children, um, just guidance overall. Since he knew so much, he would help so many people, and I'm not alone. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to comment, when they see this, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I knew it." I mean, there was a lot of people. Even now, he passed away a couple of years ago. But even now, there'll be people that like, "Oh yeah, I know him, or I know of him." Yeah. So he would have been, yeah. If he's looking down on us right now, he'd be like, "Shit." That's kind of like, he was like, he's really proud of his, you know, his people.
How did your experience working with Ed Lopez lead to where you are right now?
Okay, so working with Attorney Lopez, you're involved with a lot of areas of law. Okay, so I got involved with the Philippine consulate. I was an accredited notary to do apostilles, to do red ribbon, seals, and then I would also be involved in a lot of the personal injury cases. Now, I've always been a car enthusiast fan for a long time. Ever since I was in the third, maybe the second or third grade. Like, I either wanted a Corvette or I wanted a 300ZX. Now I probably wouldn't be able to fit in either, but back then, those are the cars I wanted. So, throughout the many years, I would always like watch cars and see cars, go to the auto shows and stuff like that. And so I got involved with personal injury through Attorney Lopez because he showed me how like things work, when you deal with repairing your vehicle and how it looks like from a crash to post repair. It's amazing. It's almost as if it never happened, you know. And then I also learned that you'll be amazed like how fragile the body is. I mean, there's like for example, if there's a car that like hits you at like maybe 5-10 miles an hour. I mean, you think that sounds like nothing, but actually there's a lot of damage that it does to a person's body. and I learned all that stuff from him. So I took what I learned from all those years dealing with personal injury, and now I'm here. And the stuff that I learned over there plus what I'm learning at Venerable is, it's crazy. It's truly, truly crazy. I mean, I now know what he meant when he started to tell me how important it is to take care of people, take care of their injuries. It wasn't really all about the money for Attorney Ed. He just wanted to help the people. So when I came over to Venerable, I felt like this was the place for me because that's all they care about. They had like the same the same core principle, like let's take care of the people. That's why sometimes when I see those billboards out there, and I don't want to name any names, but you see those billboards out there and they're joking around, and they're making all these gimmicks, and so yeah, sometimes it's funny and stuff, but when you're in an accident, you don't feel like you want to laugh, especially if you're the one involved in the accident or it's someone that you feel for that person, you want to help that person, and so that's the reason why I'm here. Yeah, this is I mean, I consider this for my home.
What you mentioned earlier is really deep. Your analogy is life itself. When it happens, especially in a car accident, someone like Attorney Ed Lopez helps people. It's as if at the end nothing ever happened. What is that like in the Filipino community, taking that idea to back in the 90s? What was it like in the Rampart division where it was really rampant in the Rampart? All kinds of things were happening back then. It was historic Filipino town back then was a really scary place. It really was, right? Like, I mean, no one wanted to go there. Like, you go on Carondelet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's right. That's another notorious street. I mean, there's certain streets that you just need to be careful, like cruising down, because you're gonna get hit up or you're gonna get like something thrown at your car, especially if they don't recognize you. Or I remember I was with some of my friends and we were just cruising down Temple, and then we were at a stoplight, and unfortunately my friend had his window down. And I just remembered like the flash of the second, and there's this guy that's like, "Where are you from?" And by the time I turn around, the guy is already hitting the driver, my friend. And because he had his belt on, he couldn't get to the steering wheel, and he couldn't, press on the gas to get us out of there. So for a few seconds, he was just being stalked. I mean, that's how crazy it was.
All of that was happening during the time when Bayanihan was around. Baclav has been around forever. What were people in the community? It literally was historic Filipino town without the name back then. A lot more Filipinos lived in historic Filipino town in the 90s, more so than now. There were more people, like community leaders like Attorney Ed Lopez, for the Filipinos back then.
Well, you see, he brought an outlook, a positive outlook for the area, the Filipinos that have just arrived from the Philippines and they don't know how exactly the culture is. The culture shock. So he would be like kind of like the buffer for all these people that would come over. He would teach the people, and then they would teach other people. So as a community, it would spread, on what to do. On, for example, I mean, just to like drive, in California or LA for that matter. He would give pointers and tips on how to get your tax ID, your status. He would give pointers and tips, and then those people would just spread the news out, and it would just have a positive, like, you don't feel alone when you get here, because I do know that when Filipinos come from Philippines and they arrive here, it's completely different. The attitude, the mentality, the growth, the way the speed of things are really brought a positive outlook to the community. He was just involved in so many things, and when you have that type of mentor, you want to follow the same path.
How are you applying that to what you do now?
Well, I'm involved I'm involved with the chamber, the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce. I'm involved with another Filipino American law group. Just you know, helping my kababayans here at Venerable Injury. That's pretty much like my focus now for this part of my life. I just want this part of my life to be like helping people.
Why did you end up at Venerable?
And the reason why I ended up here is because, number one, like I said, they had that core principle of helping people, and number two, I'm a techie guy. For those of you that know me already, you guys know I used to work at a couple of like electronic chains back in the day. I also used to be a DJ back then. So
really,
yeah,
Wait, which electronic chains did you work for?
Oh, I used to work for Circuit. Well, I mean, this is gonna be like old school, but I used to work for Circuit City. I used to work for Best Buy. I had Techniques 1200s.
Oh, wow, the standard.
Yeah, that is the standard. Yeah. So, and the one thing, I think the thing cool about Venerable is that they have their own like an app. They have their own app called Claim Track, and you're able to like track your progress when you have a claim or case. And so it's another way of me helping people. It's not really a sales thing, but it's just a way for me to help people. So when people call me, Mike, I got into an accident, or Mike, I need help, I'll be like, open up your claim track, this is what you do, take a look at this and take a look at this, and it's all right there. So it could be like 2 in the morning, and I could just say, open up your claim track and do this, because that's the technology these days. It's not like back then, when you had to call and you had to wait. If anything happened on the weekend, you had to wait till like the Monday. Yeah,
or
now
Tuesday.
or Tuesday. But nowadays you don't need to. So they're on top of the technology side. So it just really came hand in hand.
That is so awesome, and I'm so intrigued. Speaking of tech, Circuit City was one of my favorite stores.
Oh man.
What was your experience like being a DJ in LA in the 90s? That was a time when a lot of people, like groups of friends, all had DJ crews all over SoCal.
Right. So I came from a time even earlier when there really wasn't that many groups as there are now. Okay. Of course there were groups. Every junior high school had some groups, but it's not like the hundreds and thousands that there are now. So we would do like house parties. We would do like small school dances. There was one time where I did one on a boat, on a yacht, and then we would team up with other DJ groups back then. Yeah, it was, and then also the house parties were a different story too, because back then it was dangerous to go to a house party. You don't want to hang out in front of the house, otherwise you're gonna get blasted, so you had to stay inside. And then it's just part of the scenery back then.
Did you get to go towards the east, like West Covina area? There's a whole group of people from West Covina, Pomona area.
Yeah.
And some of them weren't really friends with people in Rampart, even the South Bay, right? Those dynamics were happening all at the same time.
And so I even still remember those times back then when you were at a house party and someone from West Coast was there. The word gets around really quick, like, hey, Joey from West Coast is here, or hey, this is from Pomona's from here is here, or this guy here is from LA and stuff. So yeah, those, even San Diego, there was a time where like LA Pinoys and have the better parties, and San Diego has the better parties. And I mean, we would travel. I mean, my group and I, we would travel to from LA. We would travel to San Diego just to party, and there were friends from San Diego that would travel to LA to party. And remember, back then we'd be using pagers, so the communication would be very limited. You can only like type in certain things, and if you chat, we would be using like IRC. I don't know if you even know what IRC is. You do know what
Merc and Perch.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So yeah, exactly. I mean, it was just it was a really a fun, crazy time. But I'm sure it made a lot of Filipinos a lot stronger now. The decisions we made back then to survive, the growth that we needed to do. I mean, a lot of the Filipinos back then, although they were like bangers and stuff, are now business owners, and they're thriving. You know, and so as a matter of fact, I know someone who's an attorney. He was a gangbanger, and he's an attorney now. And like there's many stories like that. The stuff that we had to endure to get to where we are now. Not all it's not all negative. A lot of that stuff really built one's character. Back then, it was more like first generation Filipinos, right? So no one knew which way or which route to go, and you have to try to fit into places, especially if you're Phil-Am. Like, for example, for me, since my Tagalog is not so fluent, and you grew up in LA, so you had to try and fit in, where you could. Do you fit in with the Filipinos? Do you hang out with the Latinos? Do you do all these trying to fit in stuff? So it was a different time, but it was a good time.
We're talking about the 90s and fast forward 2024. What is it like now in LA? Since you've seen a lot of growth, you've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhoods around LA, and especially in the historic Filipino town. And now Koreatown is booming, and it's gotten bigger and bigger. Like, I remember back in 1991, there was the riots, right? Like Rodney King and all that. And Koreatown was like south of Olympic. I mean, it wasn't as big as it is now. Like, and there were fewer Koreans back then, and fewer Korean businesses. Venerable Injury Law has an office in Koreatown.
Yes.
And you're serving the people of Koreatown as well.
Yes. So here's a story. Okay, so I used to date a girl back then, and we wanted to go eat at a place that was like in the evening, right? And back then, your choices were either like Chinatown or Koreatown, and in Koreatown, there was only like a few known spots that were open past midnight. Now there's like gazillion spots open in Koreatown now that you can go to like at any time at night. Back then it was really, really different. It was only like some known spots. So I think the addition with social media, um, and the Facebook communities and the groups and the Instagram groups, um, the news travels fast. Amongst where to go and what to do, what to avoid. Back then also it was really hard to know like um, your decisions, just on regular decisions, like where should I go to buy this model car, right? There was no like internet or anything to ask your friends, but now you post something and then you're gonna get like 40 recommendations of where you should go, or who you should like. I need a ride, here or there. Shout out to Silos Transport, by the way. Yeah, I mean, you get like 50 recommendations on who to use. So the information travels faster, especially within the Filipino community, because there's that kababayan spirit, the camaraderie amongst the Filipinos is very strong. Whether you're born here in America or you're born in Philippines, you raise up that Filipino flag, dude, it's over. You're gonna have like a whole army, get together. That's another thing too. Back then, I think we were more divided, back then. But now, I think we're more, um, unified because of social media. Like, for example, I mean, I went to an event this past Saturday, and it was called Carsilog. Okay, shout out to Bobby of Carsilog.
Bobby Lee.
Bobby Lee. Shout out to Bobby Lee. And it was amazing. Like it was not just Filipinos, it was diverse. You know, I saw Latinos there, I saw Caucasians there, I saw African Americans there, and it was all, you know, it was giant. There was so many people there. And you see a lot of those groups that get together. Back then it wasn't. Back then you know, you can go into, for example, Glendale Galleria. Glendale Galleria back then would be cliques of Filipinos, right? There'd be a clique hanging out at the Carl's Jr., a clique by the clock, a clique on, you know, on each side of different Filipino groups. But now it's more united, you know. So like for example, your events, you know, when you do your event, like everyone would go, everyone goes. There's no like, okay, well, I'm from this area, I'm not going to go, or I'm from this area, I'm not going to go. I want to go to a Mic Diaz event, and so like cities from wherever will go, you know. So it's a lot more, in my opinion, it's a lot more unified these days because of social media.
How does that dynamic flow into what Venerable Injury Law is doing?
Well, the law firm itself has the diversity in its team. So, for example, we have people who speak Tagalog, we have people who speak Chinese, we have people who speak Korean, we have people who speak Spanish, you know, of course, English. And so even though our corporate office is in Koreatown, we don't cater just to the Koreans or Korean Americans. You know, as you may know, Filipino Town is right next to Koreatown. And the Philippine Consulate building is just like...
Is in Koreatown.
Yeah, it's in Koreatown, and it's like 30 seconds away. So, you know, shout out to Nery's at the consulate. You can grab some barbecue at Nery's, and then
they're another institution that, you know, has been around for such a long time.
Yeah. So, and it's really cool too. You know, and also, I'm really proud of Filipinos. You know, but back then, it wasn't really the cool thing. I mean, I hate to sound cocky, but it wasn't really the cool thing. Like there wasn't a lot of Filipino establishments, right? But nowadays there's a lot, you know, with restaurants. There's restaurants in like every city now. There's designers now that are Filipino. There's Filipinos putting out movies now, books, you know. So it's really amazing how we've kind of evolved into this really productive, you know, Asian minority. Yeah.
And speaking of Asian minority, I know that you do a lot of work with the Stop Asian Hate movement.
Yes.
And a lot of the Asian American and Pacific Islander advocacy.
Yes.
And so can you tell me a little bit about what Venerable Injury Law does with those two things?
The managing attorneys of this company, they are not only, you know, personal injury attorneys, they're also advocates for the Asian Americans. So they belong to strong organizations that has to do with, you know, with the Asian American welfare. So just like you mentioned, the Asian hate areas, they've actually mentioned about that in a podcast they have going on. They're in a podcast right now where they're discussing Asian hate crimes and how Asians are affected by it, not only just in LA, but kind of like, you know, all over the nation, you know. And I know that they're also doing another one on bullying too, you know. And I know, and you can even see it in a lot of the movies now, you know, or a lot of the TV shows that they'll talk about how when you were young. For example, myself, I'll give you an example, right? So, for example, my mom would, you know, of course, cook us food in the morning to bring to school, right? And you open up your plastic container, right? And usually it's not really Tupperware, right? Usually it's like a margarine container that's mixed with like rice and adobo, whatever. And when you open it up, like sometimes there could be a smell that you're just used to, but other people aren't because of the culture. And so after that point, you would get bullied, right? And so a lot of their podcasts right now are talking about how Asian Americans are bullied just because of that, and the certain culture sensitivity and awareness that's not yet adapted, you know. So they're very proactive when it comes to that. I mean, it's not just, and I hate to keep boasting about it, and I don't want to sound biased, but they stand by their principles, as Asian Americans themselves, So it's not just the fact that one's Korean, one's Chinese, one's Filipino. We're all Asian, So we all need to take care of each other, So that's the reason why. Yeah. When I think of venerable injury law, it's just like the umbrella of protection for all Asians. I know that sounds like maybe too strong or something, but sometimes if you hear Attorney Alex talk, you'll feel it in the way he talks, and then when you hear Attorney Sidney talk, you'll hear his the empathy.
Attorney Sidney Son is Korean and Attorney Alex is
Chinese. Yeah, those are the two managing attorneys, but they also have other attorneys that work alongside with them, especially in the Filipino community. So I also, work alongside with other Filipino attorneys, and we just in case, like for example, if someone calls up Venerable and they say, oh, we need some help with this matter, we don't just say, oh, you know what, I'm sorry, we don't do that here. We would just easily, oh, okay, no problem, we'll get their information, and then we'll pass them to the right attorney. So, especially for the Filipino community, see, sometimes the Filipino clients wants to deal with Filipinos because sometimes they're intimidated, So it's better if they speak directly to a Filipino because we understand how it is, the culture. Sometimes there's a communication issue or they're very passive. We have a lot of clients that are Filipino, and when they give a statement to an officer, of course they get intimidated, right? And they say things that they don't really mean. Or sometimes they give out a misinterpreted sign to the officer, like as if they're guilty when they're just really being humble. So so you need attorneys that understand that type of body language and is used to that culture.
There's that issue of cultural difference and a language barrier. What other issues do you see from non-Filipino communities that venerable injury law helps?
It's probably the differences in understanding and patience.
Going back to the Filipino community and building communities and involving everyone else, non-Filipino communities, what do you think should be done?
I think exposure would be a big part of it. Exposure and awareness. When you have people that are non-Filipino around you, introduce them to our culture. Introduce them to our way of doing things, whether it be with like cooking food or inviting them to a gathering, a family gathering, or talking to them about their, maybe they have some issues or some decisions that they need to make. Always be open and caring, and that's pretty much it. Because the Filipino spirit is really welcoming. It's really warm. I mean, you always hear that when someone visits the Philippines and they make a comment. It's always like, I love the Filipino people. They're so warm. They're so welcoming. I think if that's more of that here, I think the non-Filipinos would understand how we are more, and be more aware. So I think that's a positive way of just really exposing our culture more, especially with social media. Especially with social media. Don't just tag like your friends that are Filipino because you're eating lumpia. Tag your other friends that are non-Filipino so they could be like, oh shoot, I want to try that. I want to see what pancit is about. I want to see what duron is about. I think that's really the way. Actually, I'll give you one last story. Okay. So I'm DJing in my house, right? And we have a lot of friends that come around. And back then, like I said, there was a few DJs, not too many with the equipment. And I just, I was blessed back then to have the equipment. So we have our friends that are dancers, right? There's a DJ group, there's dancing groups back then, right? And I remember there was this one guy who would come up to us and contacted me, and we were friends, because at that time our girlfriends were from the same high school. It was Immaculate Heart back then.
All girls school.
All girls school. Yeah. Exactly. And so he would call me and he would say, "Hey, Mike, I have this idea. You guys can be the DJ. We could be we could be the rappers and the dancers, and we'll call the group All Mixed Up, right?" Now I was cocky, okay? I was big-headed. I was dumb. I was mayabang, like to the max. So I said, no, it's okay. I don't want to. So I kind of like just let it go. I didn't really respond to him, and he probably doesn't remember this either. But you know who that was? Will I Am. We had the same. We would go together to visit our girlfriends at Immaculate Heart, and he went to Marshall. I went to Marshall.
So now we know something about Will I Am.
Yeah. Shout out to Will I Am. Will, I'm still here. And then also, Apple. It's been a while since I've seen Apple. Shout out to Apple. Of course, I know him as Alan. Alan and I, we used to dance back at Irving in junior high. Of course, I'm like 1,000,000 pounds now, but back then, I was super thin. And so,
like breaking and stuff?
Well, yeah, but Alan knows. He used to teach me how to do the Running Man.
Yeah, they had a dance crew, right?
Yeah.
Were you part of that dance crew?
Well, no, I was part of the DJs. Yeah, but the dance crews back then, I mean, he went through different dance crews. Actually, everyone did back then, But yeah, it was really, really fun back then. I have pictures with Alan and those times. I'd like to catch up with him. There was one time I was in Philippines. I tried to catch up with him because he was being interviewed. I think it was on ABS-CBN, but I had a business out there. It was a nursing review center. But I just kind of like missed him, and then years pass, life kicks in. I haven't been able to catch up with them, but I'd love to catch up with them as well. I just really want to be part of that movement that pushes forward for the Filipino community. I want to be part of that movement that spreads the awareness. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
And thank you so much.
Yeah,
and this was a really fun episode.
Thank you very much, Mick. I really had fun on this episode. It was great. I learned a lot. Thank you for everyone for watching, taking the time out of the day to listen to me talk, and very memorable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael Azagra of Venerable Injury Law.
There you go.
We'll see you guys soon.
See you. Take care. Bye. Drive safe.
Don't miss out. Want to be seen? Want to be heard? Want lots of exposure? Ask us how.